Metal onglongs. I had to look this up. It is not a named instrument, but rather a descriptive term for a metallic rattling sound like tin cans rattling in the wind. It essentially represents a tinny metallic sound effect, most notably associated with the music of Tom Waits.
Did you add that last bit, or is that really there?
No, that's that when you Google it, that's what it says. It's amazing. It really is.
Right. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. So glad to have you around. This is Andy, and that is John over there. We are going to be digging into a song of John's choosing, and I'm curious, as I'm sure most of you are out there. John, what have you got in store?
So it's about time. It's about goddamn time, as they say. We're getting into Mr. Tom Waits.
Oh, okay. Tom Waits, huh? All right. Well, I have an interesting relationship with Mr. Waits, as a lot of people probably do, right? I know that there's the camp of like lovers, there's the camp of haters, and then I'm sort of like in this hit or miss area, which I think is the third kind of pocket of people where it's like sometimes, man, it's just too much, and other times I really do like it. So I guess we'll see which side this track falls on for me. So what is it?
So the track is called Shore Leave.
Shore leave. Okay. Well, suppose I have everything I need to know and a little bit of morbid curiosity about what I'm about to get into here. But let me go off, scope it out, and I will come back and let all y'all know what I made of it. Interesting descending stuff there.
Well, with buckshot eyes and a purple heart, I rolled down the national stroll.
Interesting opening lines. So first of all, things start off with that kind of interesting 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 kind of descending sound. I think on a guitar, definitely by the second 1 2 3 4, definitely sounded like it was a guitar. There are all these interesting like percussive sounds, even on instruments that sound like they're perhaps stringed. I don't know if I heard like a little, maybe like a pizzicato or two in there. Um, some sort of stringed Far Eastern instrument that is thought provoking. Like I'm sure he selected that instrument for a reason. And then they go into this really interesting line where he's like, with buckshot eyes and a purple heart, I rolled down the national stroll. Now, I'm only a line or two into the song, and I'm already thinking of like a obviously a soldier with the purple heart reference. Buckshot eyes is an interesting description for anything, let alone eyes. And the National Stroll, I don't know, that makes me think of the National Mall, like in DC. Um, but the music doesn't sound DC. The music sounds a bit further east than that, in some regards, anyway, right? So I don't know, really interesting. Already has that Waitsy, rough storyteller kind of approach to his vocal delivery. I'm intrigued. Let's see where we go from here.
And with a big fat paycheck strapped to my hip sack,
Hmm.
and a shore leave wristwatch underneath my sleeve, in a Hong Kong drizzle on Cuba Cuban heels.
Mm.
I rode down the gutter to the blood bank. And I left all my papers on the Ticonderoga. And I was in bad need of a shave.
Bad need of a shave.
I slopped at the corner on cold chow mein and shot billiards with a midget until the rains stopped.
Mm.
I bought a long sleeve shirt with horses on the front, and some gum and a lighter and a knife, and a new deck of cards with girls on the back.
Mm.
And I sat down and wrote a letter to my wife. And I said, baby, I'm so far away from home. Yeah, I miss my baby so. I can't make it by myself. I love you so. And I was pacing my.
Now, interesting how his vocal delivery has kind of been that storyteller vibe the whole way through until he gets to this part where he's writing his wife, and it becomes as close to melodic as anything has gotten in this song, really. And he actually, dare I say, sings it a bit, which is an interesting choice too. There, like, right, like, why did he make that decision? I guess it's to signify maybe like the heartfelt nature of what he's espousing to her, which is an interesting like delineation between how he was delivering his like almost stream of consciousness lines to this, recalling of the writing back home aspect. Really interesting stuff. I think we're firmly not in Washington, D.C. That national stroll may have thrown me for a loop, but now I think we're firmly, somewhere in the Far East. As the soldier, I instantly go to like a Vietnam or Korea. I mean, I know there was a direct allusion to, I think, like Hong Kong drizzle or something like that. But regardless, it's clear that he's away from home as he's writing his girl back home and telling her how much he missed her, and just also the food and the playing cards and all this, all very soldier overseas type behavior. This narrative is depicting. So yeah, interesting stuff, man. This guy can weave a hell of a tale.
Myself, trying to make it all last, squeezing all the life out of a lousy 2-day pass. And I had a cold one at the Dragon, some Filipino floor show. And I talked baseball with a lieutenant over a Singapore sling. And I wondered how the same moon outside over this Chinatown fair could look down on Illinois and find you there.
Ooh, those are some great lines. Some really, really great lines. I talked baseball with the lieutenant over Singapore sling and wondered how the same moon outside over this Chinatown could fare looking down Illinois and find you, like something to that, like really, really evocative stuff. Like I'm gonna have to go capture these and make sure I got them correctly, these lyrics, but God, poetic, romantic, but all still wrapped up in this gruff, voice in a setting that he's depicted that is anything but romantic, right? Really interesting. It's like he's talking about alienation in an alien nation. Good shit.
You know I love you, baby. I'm so far away from home. I'm so far away from home. Yeah, I miss my baby so. I can't make it by myself. I love you so.
really interesting sounds. Yeah, shore leave. Yeah, so many interesting bits and pieces and sounds throughout this. I couldn't name every instrument. There are things that sound like some sort of xylophone, um, rattles and shakers. This mix of like Western guitar sound with this stringed instrument that sounds very much of Asia, which is an interesting that alone is an interesting choice because here he is, this Westerner, in trying to get by in a foreign country, and just the idea of mixing those two sounds kind of illustrates him trying to fit um in this foreign place, right? And his that sort of whining alley cat delivery that he has, I know that's probably to some polarizing or even, dare I say, abrasive, but it really captures, I think, his loneliness and his want for familiarity, which is powerful stuff. I mean, this is all really, really thought provoking. And it is, I mean, it's a song, don't get me wrong, but more than that, it's a story being told. Um, and again, wildly evocative in its content. Yeah, I really enjoyed this stuff. I mean, Waits is like hit or miss with me, as I think is probably the case with a lot of people. I know there's some diehards out there. I've met them. I love them. I've befriended them. We've discussed Waits. There's some stuff of his that I really enjoy, and the other times it's a little too much for me. This wasn't one of those cases where it was. This was really interesting stuff that will not get stuck in my head the way a pop song might, like an earworm, but it will be stuck with me in that it's powerful in its content, and it makes you think. It might not make you hum along, but it will make you think. And that's art, man, to a T. So I would be interested to learn more about this track. I know a bit about the man, and I'm sure John will help fill in some gaps there for me, but I'm really interested to learn more about the narrative of this song, maybe what inspired it, and if I'm, correct in what I assume it's about. Again, this feeling of being alienated or feeling alienated in an alien place. Yeah, which I'm sure a lot of people have felt, no matter where they're from or where they are. Yeah, man, good shit. Let's get back to John.
Detective Kenneth Hutchinson, he's back. So you've had to listen to Shore Leave by
Yeah.
the redoubtable Mr. Waits. What did you make of the whole bag of nails?
Well, there was a lot of nails in the bag, and a lot to be made of them. This was really fucking interesting song, man.
Yeah.
Almost, God, I don't want this to be taken as it's almost less music and more of just art, that it's been created, right?
Oh, yes. If this was a cheese, it would be Stilton or Gorgonzola. It's textured. It's
Yeah,
got veins running through it. It's
all
really
kinds of shit.
atmospheric. Yeah.
Yeah, there might even be something squirming inside of that thing.
Still
Um,
alive.
so it kicks off with this really, I quirky, descending 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3,
Do,
4
do,
like
do,
motif.
do.
Yeah, and it's sounds guitar-y. At least by the second 1, 2, 3, 4, it sounds very much like a guitar. And then these really interesting bits and pieces of percussion can be heard working in the background. There's also some whining guitar and some lower strings thrumming in the distance, and I mean the distance, it sounds like. And then this interesting strum coming from what sounds like a stringed instrument from the Far East. Now, I don't know what the name of this instrument is that I've heard 1,000 times whenever there's a scene in a movie, whatever cliche instrument
Ding,
that
ding,
is.
ding, 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 ding,
Yes,
ding.
yes, yes, exactly. It's like some sort of guitar harp thing from over there. And Waits comes in with this unique delivery of his, and it's like he's telling us a story he's told
Yeah.
1,000 times. And it opens with like, well, with buckshot eyes and a purple heart, I rolled down the national stroll, and instantly in this moment, I've got it half right, because like I'm imagining this gruff and rough around the edges veteran of war making his way down or around the National Mall in DC, because the National Stroll seems like this sort of like colloquial term for the National Mall in DC, where all these monuments to war are located and museums and all these
All
things.
right.
So that's where I go with it. You know, the purple
Got
heart
it.
and the buckshot eyes. I'm like, all right, this guy's seen shit. And now he's thinking about it or looking back on it in this area of veteran reflection where all these monuments and statues and all this stuff is. I realized I'm only half right in this. Like, he is a soldier, and he
Yeah.
is a veteran, but he's not in DC as the song progresses, and I come to realize. But it's just an interesting term, national stroll, or was that the term, the national stroll? It just seems like a fun way to describe the fucking National Mall there, DC, where all the cherry blossoms are. But I have no idea of that. And indeed, what he's illustrating here, we're just seconds into the song, so I don't know exactly. Clearly, I come to realize I'm wrong. So he delivers some line about being in a Hong Kong drizzle, as again that very Asian sounding strum makes an appearance, which is either serendipitously timed or well planned for him to make this direct allusion to a location in Asia as that strum occurs. And also, this is the point of realization that we aren't in DC anymore, Toto. So this is definitely firmly over there. As the song continues and more of the narrative unfolds, very little is changing in my mind's eye. I still imagine this tale of a disheveled soldier making his way in a world that feels foreign to him. The music is really void of any melody, though it is rhythmic in all these different rhythmic ways, which is what makes it really interesting. And lyrically, it's oddly specific, though ultimately like poignant. Like, some of the stuff he's saying seems like superfluous information that really doesn't directly connect to his sort of being feeling alienation in an alien nation, right? Like, it's like buying the cards with the girly cards or whatever, and eating cold food, and from over. It's all. But I guess what it does do is illustrate how inside of his own mind he is, being this loner who misses the social aspects of being at home and the comforts that come with that. And when you're away from it, you do begin to live in your own head, where any thought is just a thought to get you through that moment. So for that, that's like the artistic quality in it for me that I really appreciate. Kind of illustrates this guy's state of being, as he's over there going through all of this. And I keep saying over there because, like, I'm thinking like Vietnam, I'm thinking Korea, but then you get allusions to Hong Kong, which is neither of those two places. So it's like, it's all very odd, and I don't know what specifically it's illustrating. And I also don't know if that's just like a term that is like the Hong Kong drizzle is something that they call just the soldiers referred to all poor weather that they encountered when they were over there, as they were wont to do back then during those times. So yeah, he then delivers this wonderful stanza of lyrics that really illustrates what a great storyteller Waits is. He says, "And I talked baseball with a lieutenant over a Singapore sling, and I wondered how the same moon outside over this Chinatown fair could look down on Illinois and find you." Like, what a fucking bit of poetry that is.
It's great, isn't it?
It's so pretty. And I would like to think that whomever that was written about would absolutely swoon at the sound of those words, because they are so poetic.
But it's also kind of a universal truth as well. You understand it straight away, and everybody can say,
yeah.
makes...
And it's something that's been used oftentimes, like I'm looking up at a star or the moon and wondering what your vantage point of the same thing is across the globe, because it's one of the very few things that no matter where you are, you can see, right? So yeah, it's been used a million times, but it's done really, really well here. Hark, more vocalizing in the next portion as he laments how far he is from home and his longing for his woman. We get all kinds of interesting sounds during this portion. The plonking of some kind of xylophone-esque instrument, or at least something akin to that. Reverb guitar, a shaker in the distance, some sort of muffled horn, fluttery strums, and of course, Waits calling like an alley cat and delivering what I believe is the title of the track until it eventually winds its way to the finish line. But yeah, this was this is really an experience listening to this song. Some really interesting bit of storytelling, and while this isn't going to be something you whistle along with or get stuck in your head, it is undeniably intriguing and thought-provoking. Waits expertly taps into the visceral feeling of alienation in an alienation, as I mentioned before. He makes you feel for this person he's depicting. You want him to get back home and find peace and love on the other side of this shit existence he's grown tired of. And to me, that's real art. And it takes a real talent to be able to capture that in such a succinct way, while also creating all of this interesting music for the atmosphere that the narrative is set to. Yeah, it's all really interesting, cool stuff. And even like I mentioned earlier, the odd lines that you don't think are really apropos to anything, or at least the moral of the story, actually do a couple of things. One, they do illustrate how I mentioned you live inside your own head, especially in places where you don't feel comfortable. But also to kind of paint a picture that you're going to feel sympathy or empathy for this character who, through these seemingly, non sequitur like information, you're going to realize that he's not a perfect person. He's got girly cards and he's drinking, and maybe he's doing a little gambling, and all this stuff that you're not supposed to. That's not glorify these things or whatever, or traditionally speaking, you're not supposed to. And yet, despite all these imperfections, he has earned a Purple Heart. He is a soldier at war. He is coping with a lot of stuff that is above him or beyond him. And in spite of all of that, at the end of the day, he's just a man that loves his wife. So it's really interesting. You grapple with how you view this guy, the imperfection of the human condition, and all this stuff. It's all really thought-provoking stuff. So I really had a lot of fun listening to this. If it wasn't the most ear-catching, head-bobbing tune you've ever given me, it might be the least. But it's still really interesting stuff and worthy of conversation and listening.
Yeah, excellent. Interesting to see how he reacted to it. Tom Waits, I'm a huge fan. I've got every one of his studio albums and a couple of others as well. It took me a while to get to a point where I loved his stuff. I really didn't like him at all when I was younger. And he's got such a long career that's so rich. So I'm not going to go into too much about that. I will pluck out some other songs from different points in his career just to show the contrasts, but
Yeah.
two, the difference as well. Some really, and spoiler alert, one of his songs will be one of my Christmas songs 2025.
Okay.
Anyway, and Mike, you know which one I'm talking about. So I will just give you a very quick, I will concentrate on this album and this song. So he's born in Pomona, California in 1949. He's been labeled all sorts of things: jazz, troubadour, experimental, definitely, noise rock, even bits of hip hop and stuff like that, all sorts of weird stuff. Such a long and varied career. So he started on the folk scene in San Diego, Wales, Regina, and he was inspired by Bob Dylan before relocating to LA, and his debut album, Closing Time, in 1973. So he actually was recording a couple of years before then, but that wasn't released till much later. So yeah, a long career. And to put it simply, Waits' career can be split right into two sections: before Swordfishtrombones and after, which is what this song is from. So, background: in 1982, the same year, his soundtrack for the Francis Ford Coppola film One from the Heart was nominated for an Oscar. Tom Waits produced Swordfishtrombones with his wife, Catherine Brennan. Little note on that: Brennan and Waits met first in 1978 on the set of Paradise Alley, where Brennan was a scriptwriter and Waits was making his acting debut. They met again during the production of One from the Heart. Brennan was working at the American Zoetrope, Coppola's studio, as a script analyst. And according to Waits, they met on New Year's Eve. They were engaged within a week. Waits dedicated his 1980 song Jersey Girl to Brennan, and they were married later that year in LA at the 24-hour Always Forever Wedding Chapel. Brennan is generally regarded as a catalyst for Waits' shift towards more experimental sound, beginning with this album, which he produced on a dare from Brennan. He'd never produced before. She also introduced him to the music of Captain Beefheart, which had such a profound effect on him. He later said that once you've heard Beefheart, it's hard to wash him out of your clothes. It stains like coffee or blood. That's a very Tom Waits statement. With a visceral hybrid of styles and instrumentation, Swordfishtrombones marked a startling new creative point in Waits' career. He experimented the sound of his voice, tried unusual recording techniques, and utilized found sounds and bizarre textures. His trademark storytelling, backed by a piano combo, had mutated into impressionistic and surreal oral landscapes. So this period was really rich for him. It continued with the album Rain Dogs in 1985, and then Frank's Wild Years in 87, and it forms an informal sort of trilogy, which he, a landmark trilogy, which he then sort of topped off with the live album Big Time, which features songs from all that, and it's an amazing film to watch, and it is incredible. According to The Guardian, these are records of startling originality and playfulness, of cacophonous discord and sudden heartbreaking melody, in which it seemed the artist was trying to incorporate the whole history of American song into his loose-limbed poetic storytelling. So yeah, this album marks the beginning of Waits' eclectic use of instruments, of which there are many, and also a lyrical departure as well. AllMusic wrote, lyrically, Waits' tale of the drunken and the lovelorn have been replaced by surreal accounts of people who burned down their homes and of Australian towns bypassed by the railroads. A world, not just a neighborhood of misfits, now had his attention. The music can be primitive, moving to odd time signatures, while Waits alternatively howls and wheezes in his gravelly bass voice. He seems to have moved away from the Hoagie Carmichael and Louis Armstrong to Kurt Weill and Howling Wolf, as impersonated by Captain Beefheart. So for this song, the personnel, the Tom Waits, vocals and chair. I have to explain. You'll hear the start, it'll do, 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 do. And you hear this thing go, ah. That is a chair going across the floor of the recording studio, and you hear it about 8 times. Okay. This weird noise. Unbelievable. Victor Feldman, bass marimba, shaker, bass drum with rice. Larry Taylor, acoustic bass. Randy Oldcroft, trombone. Stephen Taylor Arvizu Hodges, what a name, drums. Frankly, it's a bit of a letdown. It's just drums. Fred Tackett, electric guitar and banjo, and Francis Thumb, metal onglongs. I had to look this up. It is not a named instrument, but rather a descriptive term for a metallic rattling sound like tin cans rattling in the wind. It essentially represents a tinny metallic sound effect, most notably associated with the music of Tom Waits.
Did you add that last bit, or is that really there?
No, that's when you Google it, that's what it says. It's amazing. It really is.
Great.
So amongst all that shit, I guess the marimba would have been that sort of sound that you described. But anyway, so Swordfishtrombones was ranked the second best album of 1983 by NME. In 1989, Spin named Swordfishtrombones as the second greatest album of all time. Pitchfork ranked it at number 11 in its 2002 list of the best albums of the 80s. In 2006, Q ranked it as the 36th best album of the 80s. And in 2012, Slant magazine listed it as the decade's 26th best album. In 2000, it was voted number 347 in Conor Larkin's all-time top 1,000 albums. And it also features in the book 1,001 albums you must hear before you die. And as luck would have it, there's Deborah.
Oh,
here it is.
How about that?
And double page spread, my friend,
Nice.
Mr. Tom Waits. There we go. Before Malcolm McLaren, Def Leppard, REM Murmur, the other Soul Mining, there's two belters,
Nice.
Bobby Dazzlers. Ooh, that's a previous year now, but Minor Fem's debut album, self-titled, fantastic. And the other way, Blue Nile, Cyndi Lauper. Oh, Paul Simon, Hearts and Bones, not his best, but not bad. Echo and the Bunnymen, Porcupine, and ZZ Top, Eliminator.
There we go. She's
She's got hair down to her fanny. She's got the jet set driving through her panties. What a year to be alive. So, the lyrics, as you quite rightly said, he narrates this. It's almost like a travel log, and when seen live and big time, he does it with this lamp, and he's crouching and kind of just lights up a small amount, and it's just, he's telling it's just amazing.
Yeah,
he
you
is
know what
a
else
master.
is interesting, John, about this, the vocal performance on this is I forgot to mention when he's addressing his wife almost directly, almost like he's reading the letter or whatever. He's actually vocalizing.
Yeah, he's
one
singing.
of the only times in the song, I think, which is an interesting decision. Also, like sort of this planned technique to illustrate the emotion of the moment and less of the free flowing thought that's going on around it, which I thought was a really interesting technique to use as well vocally. And I forgot to mention it, so yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. So, well, with bugshot eyes and a purple heart, I roll down the national stroll. And with a big fat paycheck strapped to my hip sack and a shore leave wristwatch underneath my sleeve, in a Hong Kong drizzle on Cuban heels, I rode down the gutter to the blood bank. And I'd left all my papers on the Ticonderoga and was in bad need of a shave. I slopped at the corner on cold chow mein and shot billiards with a midget until the rain stopped. And I bought a long-sleeve shirt with horses on the front and some gum and a lighter and a knife and a new deck of cards with girls on the back. And I sat down and wrote a letter to my wife. And I said, baby, I'm so far away from home and I miss my baby so. I can't make it by myself. I love you so. Well, I was pacing myself, trying to make it all last, squeezing all the life out of a lousy 2-day pass. I had a cold one at the Dragon with some Filipino floor show. I talked baseball with a lieutenant of a Singapore sling, and I wondered how the same moon outside this Chinatown fair could look down in Illinois and find you there. And you know I love you, baby. And I'm so far away from home. And I'm so far away from home, and I miss my baby so. Can't make it by myself. I love you so. And then we have that guitar solo, which is quite extraordinary. It's kind of falling over all the time, but doesn't quite. And it's just wonderful. And there's various percussion going all the way through this, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And then he comes back in vocalizing, Charlie, bow, Charlie, 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 and it goes on until he's creeping off down the alleyway where he gets mugged or something, I think, at the end. So yeah, it's extraordinary, and this is the point where he went from standards. I mean, he really honed his craft as this sort of wisecrack, drunk pianist, stroke troubadour, stroke, poet, sort of Beat Generation type thing, and it's amazing stuff that she did on his albums up to this point. Yeah, I mean, really, some of the Blue Valentine's probably my favorite combination of all that. But this is a real departure, and again, back then I tried Captain Beefheart and couldn't stand it either, and now thanks to Greg giving me one of those, I've reassessed it and I'm really getting into Captain Beefheart. I've got 5 or 6 of his albums now, and I can see the direct correlation and also the influence on PJ Harvey, which I never understood before. So yeah, just really, really amazing album this, and in terms of it's it probably is my favorite Waits album, and it's probably a top 10 album of mine, I would say, just for creativity alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will get into more. I will, and some of his other stuff, which sometimes, frankly, is almost unlistenable. Again, is hugely creative. He does his own like beatboxing and it's really hard shit. But anyway, so I will get into more Tom Waits with other stuff. But just to summarize, so he has done 17 studio albums, 3 live albums, and 2 soundtracks. He has won 2 Grammys, and he's sold over 4 million records in the United States alone. But he hasn't had an album go platinum. It's just solid sales from all of his stuff.
Right. Think about, like, if you're in a band, right, and you want to do a little bit of divergence and you want to do a little bit of experimentation, your label's like, no. And then you look over and you're like, look, how's Waits getting away with this for his entire fucking career? Like, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. It can be labeled, as you just said, unlistenable, and it still gets put out. It still makes sales, and all I want to do is make a little tweak to a song. It's just funny to me thinking about that situation, because he is the perfect example of somebody, this rare animal, right, where you can do whatever you want musically, and no one really puts up barriers or hurdles, or if they do, you clear them with such ease they never get mentioned. So it's just odd to me that one of those exceptions to this rule.
Well, to be fair, when he went away and did this album, he came back and the record label said, nah.
Yeah, I'm sure that,
And so he went, okay, fuck yeah. And Island Records heard about it, and Island Records said, yep, we'll do it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I mean, at the time, they definitely celebrated that sort of stuff. They would put out that sort of, and he stayed with them for a long time as well. So yeah, but I mean, he's kind of quintessential Holt. I mean, he really is, and he's so respected now. He's still doing stuff to this present day, but I mean, he hasn't put a record out in, I think, 2011 was his last one, but he's still doing stuff, And he was in that Buster Scraggs thing, Coen Brothers, that sort of anthology film.
Yeah.
It's really funny in that. But yeah, cool. All right. Well, I will come back with some other stuff that's a little bit different.
Please do.
We might have some of his earlier stuff with a lovely sort of jazzy swing to it, and a dark side as well, lyrically. But yeah, thanks for listening to this, Andy, and giving it a shot. I know it's interesting is usually a word used to avoid criticism, but this really is interesting.
No, yeah. Truly.
Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, please do hit the like button. Drop some comments. Tell us what you think about Mr. Waits and his beautiful voice, about this album in particular, and this track, obviously. And I think next one I'm going to go backwards in time. So I've got a few ideas, but tell us what you think Andy should be listening to next from Tom Waits. Love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. You don't want to miss out on more unlistenable music from Mr. Waits, do you now? That being said, we do appreciate everybody to support the channel. We will see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.